Esri, it's Katherine Green here from Esri Australia's Canberra team. I'm really excited to join you today to talk about visualizing your data in Arcgis Online. We're going to look at some of the new tools that you can use to explore and visualize your data, and then create really interesting and engaging maps and apps to share with your users. We've got loads to get through, so let's get started. So, what's on the agenda for today's presentation? We're going to start off by introducing the new map viewer, which makes it really easy for you to explore and visualize your data. Then we'll move into designing user experiences with Arcgis Experience Builder. And we'll wrap up by touching quickly on how to create data narratives with Arcgis StoryMaps. As we run through, I'll be doing some demos so you can see how these tools look and feel in the real world and start thinking about how you might use them with your own data sets. So let's jump straight into looking at Map Viewer Beta. Now, mapping is the starting point for all of your spatial data visualization. You can use your maps to explore your data and figure out exactly what it is you want to share on your final map. And whatever you build in Map Viewer is going to feed into the configurable apps that you're using to share your work. So things like StoryMaps and dashboards and experiences. Now, late last year, Esri introduced a new Map Viewer Beta, which makes this whole process much easier for you. So Map Viewer Beta is available for you to use right now in Arcgis Online. It revolutionizes the web mapping experience. It's fast, it's intuitive, your workflows are streamlined, and it's easier to make sense of your data. And you have instant visual updates whenever you make a change to your mapping styles. Under the hood, it's all built on the Arcgis API for JavaScript 4x. So you generally have a really improved user experience. Things are much faster and you've got lots of great new features. So some of the new features that we get with Map Viewer Beta, we've got really interesting new pop-up configurations. We can do better labeling. We've got new smart mapping styles. We've got all of this, which makes it so much easier for you to explore your data. So you can be curious, you can be messy, you can ask questions of your data that you don't usually have time for. You've got a lot of speed and flexibility with the mapping experience now, so it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. Whatever you produce at the end of the day, it's going to be right for the types of maps that you need to create. If you haven't tried out the new Map Viewer yet, I would definitely recommend you jump in and have a go. So if you're a desktop user who hasn't jumped into the world of web mapping yet because maybe you're worried it won't look as good and it won't have the same functionality as your desktop maps, with the new Map Viewer, you might be proved wrong. If you're a GIS newbie or someone who's self-taught, or you're the kind of person who likes diving in head first and just getting on with it, the new Map Viewer supports really intuitive workflows. So it makes it easy for you to explore mapping without having to read any how-tos before you get started. If you're a web map developer and you usually work with other tools, you might find that the new Map Viewer interface is more familiar to you. And if you're an experienced Arcgis Online user, someone who's making maps and apps already, you might like to know that all of the new features you get with Map Viewer Beta, so all of those new mapping styles, those pop-up configurations and the labeling, all of that will translate into some of the newer apps like the Dashboards Beta or Experience Builder, as they are driven by that same JavaScript 4 engine behind the scenes. So enough talking about how good Map Viewer Beta is, let's jump into Arcgis Online and have a look with some real data. In this demo, I'm going to be looking at how we can use Map Viewer Beta to explore our demographic data. So in my Arcgis Online homepage, I don't go to the Map tab because that takes me to Map Viewer Classic. Map Viewer Beta currently lives in the app launcher at the top right of your page. Now you can see that Map Viewer has had a complete redesign, so it's got a very different look and feel to Map Viewer Classic. It now supports more intuitive workflows that go from left to right across the page. So on the left-hand side, I've got my key tools. Things like adding my layers and changing my base map and saving my work. In the middle, I've got the Map Viewer itself. You can see I've added some ABS census data. I've got 2016 information by SA1 looking at household characteristics. It's quite a large data set. SA1s are very small, and I've got hundreds of different fields in my data, but MapViewer can handle it really nicely. On the right-hand side of my page, I've got all of my refining tools. So changing my style, adding filters, configuring my pop-ups and my labels. I'm going to change the style of my layer now. And you can see I'm trying to add a field, but I've got hundreds of layers. With the new map viewer, I can change the order that those fields appear, so it makes it easy for me to select the field that I'm interested in mapping. I'm mapping median age of persons. So I want to see in each SA1, what's the median age of people who live there? And I'm interested in finding those areas which have a higher median age. I changed my mapping style to counts and amounts color because I want to make a choropleth map. I've got the same familiar tools from MapViewer Classic, but now when I choose any option, it immediately updates my map. So I select these color ramps and I've got that immediate visual feedback to see what everything looks like. My color ramps are now grouped into different categories, so that makes it easier for me to choose the color ramp that works best with my map or works with the series of maps in my report. And best of all, we've got a colorblind friendly group. Now we've had colorblind friendly ramps in Arcgis Online for a very long time, but now they're all grouped together. So that makes it much easier for me to select any color ramp from this group and be confident that people who have a color vision deficiency are still going to understand and interpret my map in the way that I intended. So I've set up all my symbology and I can really quickly start to see the dark blue areas, so those SA1s who have a median age of 65 and higher. This is great, and now I want to look at what that looks like in combination with people who live alone, because I'm interested in finding people who might be a little bit more vulnerable during lockdown. So I can search to add the field that I'm interested in. I add my second field, and my map immediately updates. So that smart mapping is at work. It's looking at the type of data and it's considering what are the appropriate drawing styles for this type of data. Because I'm interested in the relationship, I'm going to choose the relationship mapping style. This lets me see how two different variables interact when they are mapped together. I select the color ramp that I want to be viewing, and I make sure that my focus is on the high values. So I want to find those areas which have a higher median age and a higher number of people who are living alone. And I can very quickly start to see on my map these dark brown areas where I've got a higher median age of people who are living alone. So that can really be helpful for me if I'm a community group and I want to provide outreach services to those vulnerable people during the lockdown. Now we'll move on to another demo. Again, we're looking at census data, but now we're going to explore some of the new smart mapping styles. So I've added in some data about industry and employment, and I've symbolized it according to the predominant industry. What I want to do is look at the industry in conjunction with the number of people in each SA1 who are employed in the workforce. So I've added in a second layer, and I've added it to a group layer, which is another new feature in MapViewer Beta. My second layer, I've chosen the attribute of total persons who are employed in the workforce, and I'm going to choose the dot density style. And this is a really great new mapping style with MapViewer Beta. What it does is represent a certain number of features with a single dot. So here I've got each dot representing a certain number of people. As I zoom in and out on the map, the number of people represented by my dot changes. So I don't have to worry about configuring my map to make sure that it looks good at all scales. MapViewer Beta sets that all up automatically for me. Now I want to look at the number of people employed in the workforce and what their industry is likely to be. It's hard to do visually, and I don't want to perform any intersects because it's not my data. I don't want to derive new data and have to manage that in my Arcgis Online. So I'm going to use this new tool of cartographic blending to visually blend these two web layers together. So now my dot density layer is symbolized according to the industry and employment information. The density of the dot lets me see that there's a lot of people that are working there or live in that area and are employed in the workforce, and they are likely to be employed in the accommodation and food services industry. That makes it easy for me to target those areas who maybe are more impacted by the working from home regulations. And again, it can help me provide outreach and know where to add additional services to help the population. Arcgis Experience Builder is a new way of building really compelling web applications without having to do any coding. And that's great for people like me who have absolutely no web developer skills and probably never will. But I can now build brand new websites all based around my data and my maps just by dragging and dropping the widgets that I want onto the GUI interface. So I can say, I want this map to go here, I want it to look like this, and when you click on it, I want this thing to happen. The designs are all mobile adaptive. So I'll initially design for a desktop platform, but I can preview what my site is going to look like on a mobile device. If it doesn't quite look right, I can rejig the layout and the way that things look without impacting the way that my site is going to look on the desktop. There's a whole bunch of templates ready-made for me to get started with, and I can also design my own. So if I do have a series of sites that I'm making which I want all to look the same, I can just create a template and I can pop in the right thing in the right place based on the new data that I'm working with. Web Experience Builder is all data driven and it's extensible. So, if there's a widget that doesn't quite meet your needs, you can actually reconfigure that and develop it so that it is custom made for your requirements. Experience Builder is fantastic because it's a collaborative effort to build your apps. So you're not just limited to the GIS user who has to sit and design a whole new website. It's completely collaborative, so you can bring in the different people in your organization who need to have input into your websites and your data sharing. So your GIS specialist can still create the data and get that all ready, but your UX designer and your graphics designers can have input on how the site should look and feel and what colors work best for your organization. Your developers can input the custom configurations and tools. Your business solution specialists can come in and make sure that what you're building meets the requirements for both the organization and your users. And the Arcgis Online Creator can put that all together so that your end users have a fantastic experience at the end of the day. Let's jump into a demo. I'm based in the ACT and we have an election coming up. And it feels quite timely to think about how we can use our data visualization tools to map and share information about the election. And I will stress everything in this demo, other than the locations of the polling places, is completely made up. So if you are a resident of the ACT, please don't use this as a guide to how you can access voting and how many people are at your local polling place. So I'm building a new experience. You can see that I've got a lot of different templates that I can choose from, which I can just add my own content into. My organization has already set up an experience template that I can just populate with the right content that I want to share. So I select that and it opens in the Experience Builder GUI. You can see that it's a pretty intuitive interface and it supports those left to right workflows. So on the left, I've got all of my widgets that I can add into my experience. So adding maps, adding surveys, text, and embedded content. In the middle, I've got the experience itself, so I can preview what it looks like. And then on the right-hand side, I've got my refining tools. So when I do add content into my experience, I can change the way that it looks. I can change the colors, or I can link to particular data sets or content. As I'm working with a template, I've got a lot of placeholders in my page, so I can just choose to add the right content in the right place. Most things are worked out for me. I can change colors really easily. Because I'm working with a template, all of the corporate colors are already preloaded, so I don't have to mess around trying to choose the right one or adding in the right hex value. My election experience is based around safe voting, so I've added in a few existing applications. I've got a nearby app which finds the closest polling place to the person's location. And I'm going to add a dashboard as well that I've created to look at the capacity of each polling place. So how many people are allowed in the polling place according to COVID-19 regulations, and how many people are actually there at the current time. And this is all fed by live data that I can collect either at my polling location so that the staff are there can keep track of numbers, or I can collect data through surveys that I can also embed into my experience. Once I add my embedded content, I can change how large or small it is. I can preview what it looks like to make sure that it is the right size. I want to add a survey here, and Experience Builder lets you add a survey straight from a widget. And I can create a brand new one or add an existing survey. Down the bottom, I'm going to add in that same image that I've got at the top that my graphics design team has created with the right colors for my election experience. And when I'm happy with everything, I can just hit the preview button. This is going to let me see what my experience looks like if I opened it in my desktop browser. So I can see it's looking pretty good. Everything's in the right place. My buttons are the right color and they change to the yellow when I hover over them. My embedded nearby app is working, so I can select a location and it's going to show me my closest polling places and some open hours for those. So I've got information about where I can go and vote on election day or voting early. My dashboard, I've chosen the right size for it, but I'm not too sure about the colors that are in my map. So I'm going to jump back into Map Viewer Beta where I created my original map. Now my map is showing the capacity of each polling place, so a high to low theme is not really appropriate. I want to center on 100% capacity. So I can just change the number and then change the color scheme to make sure that anything above 100 shows up in that red color to really signify, you know what, this is probably not the right polling place to visit right now. Maybe you should wait until later in the day or find another polling place nearby. Because this is a complete workflow, once I've saved my map in Map Viewer Beta, that's going to update in the dashboard, which is going to update in my experience. So I can just refresh my Experience Builder page and see that those changes have come through into my final experience page. With the clustering, this is a new feature in Map Viewer Beta as well. And this is completely scale dependent, so Map Viewer does the hard work for me. As I zoom in and out on the page, the number of features in each cluster will adapt appropriately. I can double check that my dashboard's working, my pop-ups are correct, my filters are working, and that's all updating my information widgets as I go through. My survey also works, and if I submit some survey data now, that's going to update my dashboard as well. So I've got real-time information coming through, all based within the single Arcgis Online platform. So I don't have to worry about managing different datasets across different databases and different platforms. Once I'm happy with my experience, I can save it and publish it. So that was a quick introduction to Arcgis Experience Builder, and you can really start to see just how easy it is for you to create engaging web apps all based around your data and the user experience. Now we're going to move into creating narratives with Arcgis StoryMaps. I think everyone who's joining us today will be familiar with StoryMaps. They've been around for a while now, and they are such a great way of sharing the stories that you discover in your data. So you can share this information with your users and really guide them through the interesting insights that you've found in your data. But you create your narratives not just with maps, but with also images and video and text. Building story maps is easy with the Story Builder. You can create the stories with the content that's best suited to your topic. If you want to include a map, you don't necessarily have to create it beforehand. If you just want to provide some quick location information, you can add an express map that adds that basic geographic context. One of the new features in the latest release of StoryMaps in Arcgis Online is themes. So you can set up themes with colors and fonts and particular accent features and apply them to your stories with the click of a button. So it's really easy for you to create stories that look and feel the same and work for your organizations and the kind of information that you're trying to share. So let's have a quick demo of how these features work. In the demo, we're going to update an existing story map which looks at heritage sites across New South Wales. So my story map is pretty much ready to go. I just want to make a couple of changes to really bring it to life. So I'm going to add another image in to give some more context to my story. I can choose an image, add it to my map, and put it in the place of my story map. I can add a caption for it to give it a bit more context. And really importantly, I can add alternative text. So for users who might be using a screen reader, they can still understand the story and still understand this contextual information I'm providing. I'm using a StoryMap tour because I'm showcasing heritage post offices across New South Wales. This is all information that I've got from the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, who look after the Commonwealth Heritage List. It's really easy for me to add additional sites to my quick map, my express map. So I haven't created a map beforehand. I'm building my map in the story map itself. I choose my image, I add some text and a caption, and I can add the location. Express maps are all built within the Story Builder, so I can very quickly just add a quick location. They're very simple, but they don't need to be complicated because I'm just providing contextual geographic information. What I want to do is link back to that heritage database. So I'm going to add a button, link it to the heritage list, and provide the URL. So when my users click on the button, they'll be taken to the database where they can start exploring this data in more detail. So I'm pretty happy with my map. I want to change the design of it though, because I do have an organizational theme. Now, themes were introduced with the latest release of StoryMaps in Arcgis Online. They're really easy to configure. I can just choose accent colors. There's a few out of the box, or I can add specific hex values if I do have organizational colors. I can change the way my fonts look, the buttons look, and the separators look. I publish my theme, and then I can select it from the design panel. I click on it and it immediately applies on my story. So you can see that the font type has changed. You can see that my colors have changed. My locations on my express map are now my organizational theme colors. The quotes are a different font and have a different border around them, and my buttons look a little bit different. Once I'm happy with the story, I can publish it. Once it's published, I can also check out how it looks if I were going to print the story, because web mapping and web reports are fantastic, but some people still like a printed report at the end of the day for their records. And pressing print on the story map just brings everything together in a PDF that you can then go ahead and print out for your records. And that actually brings us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've learned something about how you can visualize your data in Arcgis Online to create really interesting and engaging stories. To leave you with a final couple of tips. Map early and map often. Take time to explore your data. You don't need to decide what you're looking for before you start mapping. And don't worry about making mistakes. There's no such thing as a mistake when you're making maps. It's more likely going to be a happy accident and could even be the key to your entire data visualization. When you're designing your web apps, design with your users in mind. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? And finally, don't overcomplicate your work. Your stories don't need to be super complex and bombard people with information to be engaging and powerful. Everything that you've seen in today's presentation was built in Arcgis Online. I used Map Viewer Beta for my mapping. In Arcgis Experience Builder, I also embedded an Arcgis dashboard and a nearby configurable app. And I also used StoryMaps. My data came from the ABS, Elections ACT, and the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you can stick around for Q&A. I'll see you then.